That night on the Tonight Appearance stage, Neil Diamond put bottomward his guitar. Jimmy Fallon couldn't allege, and 300 admirers associates captivated their breath, because a complete that hadn't been heard in 40 years came from the back of the studio. It was April 2024. The Tonight Appearance starring Jimmy Fallon. Neil Diamond was the agreeable guest, a active fable at 83 years old, authoritative a attenuate television appearance. The admirers was electric with anticipation. This was the man who gave the world. Candied Caroline, cracklin', rosy America. Articulation that had authentic generations. Jimmy had alien him with 18-karat reverence. Ladies and gentlemen, a muse acceptable the incomparable Neil Diamond. The acclaim was thunderous. Neil absolved assimilate the date slowly, not with the activity of his adolescent years, but with the address of addition who had becoming every step. He acclimatized assimilate the stool, adapted the microphone, cradled his acoustic guitar. "I'm activity to comedy article appropriate tonight," Neil said, his articulation still affluent admitting the ears. "A song I wrote affiliated time ago for Edition who, well, you'll see." He began arena the aperture chords of Candied Caroline. The admirers started singing forth immediately. That communicable melody that makes strangers feel like family, that turns stadiums into active rooms. Jimmy stood beside his desk, smiling, comatose along. The roots were acceptable gently. The cameras captured the joy on every face in the studio. Neil sang the aboriginal verse. His articulation was older, weathered, but still accustomed that apparent warmth. The admirers swayed. Some captivated up phones, others aloof abutting their eyes and let the homesickness ablution over them. And afresh from the actual aback of the flat abreast the access breadth admirers associates delay afore taping, articulation abutting in, not loud, not performative, aloof singing, a woman's voice, bright and true, hitting the accord addendum that best bodies don't alike apperceive existed. Candied Caroline. Neil's fingers stuttered on the guitar strings. He kept playing. Beef anamnesis accustomed him through, but his arch-ag hardly like a dog audition accustomed complete from far away, the articulation affiliated still from the back. Still quiet abundant that abandoned the flat microphones were communicable agriculturate through the complete arrangement aloof loud abundant for Neil to hear. And a fresh Neil Diamond chock-full playing, his fingers aerial from the guitar strings, the bond afraid in the air and died, his eyes closed, the flat fell into abashed silence. Jimmy chock-full midway, the absolute flat froze. The admirers didn't apperceive what was happening. Had Neil abandoned the lyrics? Was this some affectionate of medical issue? The man was 83. Was he okay? Jimmy took a footfall forward, concerned, bridge his face. "Neil, you all right?" Neil didn't respond. He sat on that stool, guitar comatose adjoin his leg, eyes still closed, arch-ag against the back of the studio, listening, the woman's articulation affiliated singing. Abandoned now, a cappella, the accord band to a song she acutely knew by heart. Candied Caroline, acceptable times never seemed so good. Jimmy's arch airtight against the back of the studio. His eyes scanned the black aloft the lights, aggravating to acquisition the antecedent of the voice. And a fresh Neil Diamond spoke. His articulation about aloft a whisper, but bent altogether by his microphone. "Marsha." The singing stopped. 300 bodies captivated their breath. Neil opened his eyes. Tears were alive, bottomward his face. His easily were shaking. He stood up slowly, anxiously agreement the guitar on its angle and absolved to the bend of the stage, staring out into the admirers' area. "Marsha, is that you?" From the back of the studio, a woman in her backward 70s stepped into the aisle. The date lights bent her face, asperous by time, but with eyes that sparkled with acceptance and joy, and 40 years of waiting. "Hello, Neil," she said, her articulation accustomed through the studio. Jimmy Fallon stood beside his desk, absolutely motionless, his apperception antagonism to accept what he was witnessing. To accept what happened next, you charged to accept what happened in 1969. Neil Diamond wasn't consistently Neil Diamond legend. In 1969, he was a ascent star. Successful, yes, with several hits on the charts, but still hustling, still proving himself, still apprehensive if his career would aftermost or achromatize like so abounding others. He was assuming at baby venues beyond the country, not stadiums yet. Theaters, music halls, places breadth he could see every face in the audience. In September 1969, he played an appearance in Boston, a baby amphitheater abreast Fenway Park, maybe 400 seats. He remembers it was aqueous that night. The affectionate of abiding autumn rain that makes aggregate aroma like wet leaves and possibility. She was in the third row. He noticed her during the additional song, a adolescent woman with a photic beard and the best alert face he'd any time seen. Not agreeable like some fans, not aggravating to get his attention, aloof listening, really listening, the way musicians dream of actuality heard. Afterwards the show, as Neil was packing up his guitar backstage, a dish and a gape on his bathrobe allowance door. It was her, Marsha Murphy, 23 years old, a music abecedary at an elementary academy in Brooklyn. She'd appeared to the appearance abandoned because none of her company accepted why she admired his music so much. "I aloof capital to acquaint you," she said, continuing in the doorway, "afraid but bent that you sing the way I advise my acceptance to listen. Like every chat matters." Neil, beat from the show, began himself smiling. "How do you advise them to listen?" "I acquaint them to acquisition the harmony. Anybody hears the melody. That's easy. But the accord is breadth, the absolute adorableness lives. It's the addendum below that accomplished the song complete. They talk for 2 hours, about music, about teaching, about the aberration amid assuming and connecting." Marsha had this way of anecdotic music that fabricated Neil apprehend his own songs differently. Before she left, Neil asked if she'd appear to his abutting Boston show. She came to every Boston appearance for the abutting year. They fell in adulation the way musicians abatement in adulation through sound. She accomplished him a chord curve he'd never noticed in his own compositions. He wrote songs with her articulation in his head, apperception how she'd sing them. In 1970 they got married, a baby ceremony, aloof family. They honeymooned in California, and Marsha laughed aback. Neil said he was cerebration of effective to Los Angeles to be afterpiece to the music industry. "Wherever you go," she said, "I'll acquisition the harmony." Their alliance lasted 5 years, not because they chock-full admiring anniversary other, not because of adultery or animality or any of the accepted affidavit marriages end, but because Neil's career exploded, amphitheater tours, television appearances, recording sessions that lasted weeks. He was gone added than he was home. Marshall Capital Children, a abode with a piano in the active room, acceptance to teach, a activity that had roots. Neil Capital stages, audiences, the road. In 1975, they sat in their Los Angeles accommodation and had the chat that either of them wanted but both knew was coming. "I can't ask you to stop," Marka said, tears alive bottomward her face. "Your music matters. It alcove people. It changes them. I've apparent it." "And I can't ask you to accumulate waiting," Mia replied, captivation her hands. "You deserve addition who comes home. They afar amicably, heartbroken but honest." Marsha confused aback to Boston. Neil threw himself into his music with a like added intensity, aggravating to ample the blackout she'd labored behind. Subscribe and leave a animate version because the best able allotment of this adventure is still ahead. Over the abutting 40 years, Neil affiliated Alert More, had children, congenital allegorical career, performed for millions, won Grammys, got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But he never chock-full cerebration about Marsha. She was the one who accomplished him about harmony, about alert below the melody. Every time he performed Candied Caroline, the song he'd accounting while they were still married, he remembered the way she acclimated to sing the accord line. The addendum abandoned she knew were there. Marsha never remarried. She accomplished music in Boston for 35 years. She went to Neil's concerts aback he came to town, consistently sitting far abundant aback that he wouldn't see her, singing forth quietly, award the harmonies. She never approached him, never beatific letters, never approved to reconnect. Their time had passed. She'd fabricated a chord with it until 3 months ago. Marsha was diagnosed with lung cancer. Date 4. The doctors gave her 6 months, maybe less. She'd lived an acceptable life, she told herself. She accomplished hundreds of accouchement to adulation music. She'd backward accurate to who she was. But there was one affair she regretted. She never told Neil what his music meant to her. Not aloof aback they were married, but afterwards all those years of sitting in audiences, award the harmonies, activity affiliated to him, alike from a distance. She never told him that his best to hunt his dream had been the appropriate one, that she was appreciative of him, that the annulment hadn't been a failure but a gift, giving both of them permission to become who they bear to be. Her sister assertive her to address a letter. Marsha spent 3 weeks autograph and afterlight it. Finally, she mailed it to Neil's administration company, not assured a response. 2 weeks later, her buzz rang. It was Neil's assistant. Mr. Diamond had accustomed her letter. He capital to apperceive if she'd be accommodating to appear to New York. He was accomplishing the Tonight Show. He'd like her to be there. Marsha about said no. What was the point? They'd said goodbye 40 years ago, but afresh she thought, what if I could apprehend him comedy Candied Caroline one added time? What if I could sing the accord aloof already more, alike if he doesn't apperceive I'm there? She said, yes. Abaft the scenes, Neil had fabricated a accommodation that defied every producer's expectation. The Tonight appearance agents had no abstraction why Neil Diamond insisted on accepting a specific bedfellow in the audience. They aloof knew that Mr. Diamond had requested, appropriate actually, that a woman called Marsha Murphy be accustomed to bench. and that no one acquaint her he knew she was there. I appetite her to feel safe, Neil had told the producer. I appetite her to aloof be in the admirers like old times. What Neil hadn't counted on was how his anatomy would acknowledge to audition her articulation again. Aback Marka started singing the accord from the back of the studio. She couldn't advise herself. It was beef memory. Afterwards 40 years, Neil's absolute apple burst into that sound, that voice, those specific addendum that abandoned she had any time sung. His fingers had Arctic on the guitar. His eyes had bankrupt and 40 years attenuated like they'd never happened. Now, on the Tonight appearance stage, Neil Diamond and Marsha Murphy were staring at Anniversary added beyond a wash studio, and anybody abroad had become invisible. Jimmy Fallon assuredly began his voice. Neil, do you apperceive this woman? Neil didn't booty his eyes off Marsha. She's my aboriginal wife. I haven't apparent her in 40 years. The admirers gasped collectively, audibly. 300 bodies aback, compassionate. They were witnessing article far bigger than a agreeable performance. But this is the moment no one in the flat and no one watching at home any time saw coming. Jimmy fabricated a decision. He absolved to the centermost of the date and addressed the admirers directly. Folks, I anticipate we charge to abeyance everything. Article absolute is accident here. He angry to Marsha still continuing in the aback aisle. Ma'am, would you appear bottomward here? Marka hesitated. This wasn't what she'd planned. She aloof capital to sit in the audience, to apprehend him sing, to say goodbye in her own quiet way. But Neil continued his duke against her. Please, he said, his articulation breaking. Please, Marsha, the admirers parted. Bodies stood up, effective into the aisles to actualize a path. Marshall absolved, boring through the studio, her easily abashed until she accomplished the stage. Jimmy helped her up the steps. Neil met her at the bend, and for a affiliated moment they aloof looked at Anniversary other. You got my letter, Marka said finally. Every word, Neil replied. Why didn't you acquaint me you were sick? Because I didn't appetite, pity. I capital to apprehend you sing one added time. Neil's easily were afraid, as he accomplished into his anorak pocket. He pulled out a baby balmy allotment of paper, area music, handwritten, yellowed with age. I wrote this the anniversary afterwards you left, he said quietly. The accord band to Candid Caroline, the one you consistently sang. I never appear it. I kept it because it was yours. He handed it to her. Marsha looked bottomward at the notes. Her notes? The one she'd articulate in their accommodation 40 years ago, now preserved in Neil's handwriting. Sing it with me, Neil said. One added time, the way it was declared to be. Jimmy stepped back, the roots backward silent. The admirers was crying. Neil best up his guitar. Marsha stood beside him, captivation the area music with abashed hands. They sang Candid Caroline together. Neil on melody, Marsha on harmony. Their choir aggregate the way they had 4 decades ago. Imperfect with age but absolute in memory. Aback the final agenda faded, the admirers exploded. Continuing ovation, tears everywhere. Jimmy Fallon was above board sobbing. Share and subscribe. Accomplish abiding this adventure is never forgotten. Neil kept that accord area music in his guitar case. Marka anesthetized abroad 7 weeks afterwards affably with Neil captivation her hand. At her funeral, he sang Candid Caroline one aftermost time, and her students, now adults, sang the accord she accomplished them. The area music is now affected in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Below it, a applique reads, Some harmonies delay a lifetime to be heard again,